A very good morning to all of you. Welcome to today's news analysis. We are doing the Indian Express papers Chandigarh edition. Now you can see the topics that we are covering. So we have an article concerning a scheme of the government known as e-bus Seva. This is for electric buses. And from there we can build on the topic of urban mobility. Now there are other schemes also which were there in news like the Vishwakarma Yojana. Then another scheme, very famous one, is Digital India program. So now we are coming into the Digital India phase 2. More funding has been provided for Digital India. Now concerning the environment, we have two news articles. So one is about the landslides in Himachal Pradesh. Recently, we have seen some images on social media that buildings are collapsing. They were in the wrong areas. So landslides in Himachal is there in the news now, the reasons and everything. Besides, there is an explainer on cloudburst. Now, this topic in particular, I feel is important. This is an explainer. It tells us about the difference between heavy rainfall and a cloudburst, something which UPSC can pick up in its GS1 paper, geography. Now, I think you should prepare the definition of cloudburst. It is very simple. And you will be asked a tail question also concerning anything related to cloudburst or a disaster, anything. Okay. Now moving on to the editorial and opinion section, we have an article thanking Mr. Pathak. This is an editorial. So Mr. Pathak was responsible for the Sulabh movement. So we'll read about this Sulabh movement. Then right below the Sulabh movement, there is an article known as Global Headwinds. This is the headline. So headwinds means something that is blowing on your face, something that is leading to resistance. So global economy, we know, is not doing well. As a result, our exports are not doing well. So we have some facts and figures that we will be covering. From the international section, a lot of news actually, but one of the ones that are more important was the news concerning Triton Islands in the South China Sea region. So Triton Islands is part of the controversy surrounding the South China Sea region. And so that way it becomes important. Plus it's a good fact which can be asked in the prelims. Now coming to the economy section, the most interesting news was about banks increasing deposit rates. And in this article, there was mention of two very important terms. So one is incremental cash reserve ratio, ICRR, and certificate of deposits. So we'll see all of it in context. And in fact, these are defined in the article itself. The last article, somehow I missed mentioning it, is from the explained section, which is at the ending. And there it is telling us about different types of poverty, the measures taken by the government, the different initiatives to measure poverty. So all that is covered. There has been a question that was asked on this thing on measurement of poverty. So I've taken a screenshot. It is there on my Instagram also. If you want, I'll post it on the Telegram as well. Right. So this was a short intro of what all we are covering. Now moving on to the first news. So first of all, I'll start with the left one. RPF constable sacked faced, we all know what he did, right? Okay. Now he is in judicial custody. Now in prelims 2022, a question was asked comparing police custody to judicial custody. So very briefly, police custody is when police arrests somebody, on a suspect or anybody. So that person is in the police lockup. Well, judicial custody is when the police arrests somebody on the orders of a magistrate. So it is deemed, this person who's in judicial custody is deemed to be in the custody of the magistrate. We can also say he's in jail. So this question was asked in pre-2022, otherwise I wouldn't have done this. Next article, this I am giving more emphasis. So rupees 57,600 crores allocated to PM e-bus Seva, electric bus Seva, Pradhan Mantri. Okay. So under this scheme, 10,000 electric buses will be provided to 100 cities. I think we have already seen in your areas also, there will be electric buses that are moving around. Okay, so very briefly, here the center will be spending rupees 20,000 crores. So for purchasing the buses, 20,000 crores. And the rest of the capital is going to come from the states. So states will also bear the cost. Then the minister concerned, Mr. Anurag Thakur, is saying that this is part of the public-private partnership. So private entity will also be playing a role over here. Naturally, private entity is the one that is making the buses, right? So public-private partnership. Okay, so 20,000 crores, and this will be provided via per kilometer aid. So how much kilometer the bus runs, on that basis aid will be provided. So this will be for 10 years. Center will also help create power infrastructure, and this will also lead to job creation. 45,000 jobs, it is estimated it will create. Fine. So we have done details of the PM e-bus Seva. Now, naturally, we should be thinking as to what else is the government doing on e-mobility, right? We should know about them also. So I've mentioned some of the schemes. So one is National Mission on Transformative Mobility and Battery Storage. Then other scheme is FAME. This FAME is basically provide subsidy again, and this comes under Ministry of Heavy Industries, not power, but or Ministry of New and Renewable. No, it is only Ministry of Heavy Industries. Then e-Amrit portal. And within e-Amrit portal, there is a scheme known as e-mobility scheme. Sorry, these are actually all e-mobility schemes that I've mentioned over here. So e-Amrit. So these are the basic schemes, right? So FAME, e-Amrit, and National Mission, transformative mobility and battery storage. So very quickly. So this is e-mobility scheme, National Mission on Transformative Mobility and Battery Storage. So this is the scheme. It is having the 7 C's of e-mobility, which is common, connected, convenient, congestion-free, charged, right? So you can see it. Then we have e-Amrit, which is very difficult to read. It is part of the Niti Aayog. It is accelerated. A stands for accelerated e-mobility revolution for India's transportation. E-Amrit is really not a scheme. It is basically a web portal wherein the government tells about what all initiatives they are taking concerning e-mobility. So this is by Niti Aayog. So if anybody wants subsidy or anything, that also for that e-Amrit is there. Then, now since we are talking about the schemes, FAME you'll have to read on yourself, by yourself. Now, since we are talking about all these, there is an emerging theme about redefining urban mobility. It's mentioned in this article also, redefining urban mobility. So one way of seeing urban mobility is we are having vehicles, right? Vehicles which are running on by fuels, polluting fossil fuels. So having e-mobility will redefine urban mobility, which having vehicles which do not pollute, at least not in the cities, and they are noiseless. So that is one way of looking at redefining urban mobility, right? That is one theme that we can construct. The other theme would be having public transport system, and public transportation system can also be electric, for example, metros or e-buses. So that also can be seen. So from this article, we get a lot of important ideas, a lot of important points that we can use on our answer writing. If a question in mains is asked about redefining urban mobility. So this is for 2021. I couldn't get for the later ones. Theme was mobility for all. So it's an expression that you can use. Okay. Then it is telling us about the National Urban Transport Policy 2006, which highlights moving people rather than vehicles. So any policy about urban transport should be focusing on moving people rather than moving vehicles. The traditional emphasis have been having making roads, etc. But the idea should be how we can move people more efficiently. That means metros, public transportation, etc. Okay, idea should be inclusive. The urban transport should be inclusive. So, sabka saath, sabka vikas. Okay, so mobility for all also means the same thing. Right, so we have a lot of points over here which we can use in our answer writing. Transit oriented development, that is another term. Okay, now coming to landslides. So one is we have a statement from the Chief Minister of Himachal Pradesh who says rampant unscientific building caused Himachal disaster. And that is one thing. Next, there was a committee formed recently, a high level committee which comprised of professors from IIT Roorkee, IIT Mandi and National Highway Authority of India. And they have raised certain issues which have led to more of landslides, very disastrous landslides in Himachal. And there are two main points that have been highlighted. We know there are more issues, but two main issues have been highlighted over here. So they are saying near vertical cutting of the mountains. So near vertical cutting. So vertical cutting means the slope of the mountains. You know, this is, let's say, the mountain. So it has been cut like this, cut like this. So now the slope is vertical. This slope has gone. Now it is like this. So naturally it is more prone to landslides. So near vertical cutting. Then Shivaliks are soft mountains. You visit Shivaliks, actually the starting of the Himalayas, you visit them, you will see where, especially where the mountains are broken for construction, you will see it's sedimentary. You know, several types of rocks, etc. are combined together. So these are soft mountains and therefore highly vulnerable to landslides. So with any rains or anything taking place, it is more likely to take place, landslide to take place. Okay, then construction activities, blasting, etc. would have also led to loosening of the soil. Then affected vegetations getting affected. So those are also factors, right? Vegetation binds the soil. So naturally it will affect, it will help avoid landslides. So there are more points, but it's just that we have 2 points that are mentioned, very specific points. Now, you know, if we look at the issue of landslides, as I always say, we should refer to the NDMA website. And landslide, by the way, has been asked number of times. Overall theme is the same, landslide. One is what is landslide mitigation measures. Other is why are Himalayas more prone to landslides as compared to the Western Ghats. That is the two prominent themes of which UPSC has been asking. Now looking into the landslide issue and referring to the NDMA website, we get National Landslide Risk Management Strategy. Right. So the National Landslide Risk Management Strategy. So, okay, so that PDF is gone, but you can get it from the NDMA website. But actually I was not getting good points which we could use for answer writing. There were a lot of points. There was a PDF, entire PDF. I have discussed it previously also. You can use these points instead. We should work on slope stabilization, drainage, vegetation management, creating physical barriers, escape routes, relocation, excavation, construction, and dwelling quarters. So these are certain things that can be looked into. So these were landslide mitigation strategies for Southeast Bangladesh. That is why I think emphasis on drainage has been given. But that makes sense for mountains also. Because with the rains carry the mass that, you know, lead to the debris falling also. Okay. Next, Eve teasing to adulteress. Supreme Court handbook lists gender stereotypes. We'll cover it very quickly. Supreme Court has come up with a guidebook which tells about several types of gender stereotypes, which can be, you know, which are not appropriate. So these needs to be looked into while giving a judgment or while drafting a judgment or orders of the Supreme Court. So this is going to make the judiciary more gender sensitive and accommodative to the concerns of gender. Now here again we can think like what is the some judgments of the Supreme Court concerning the welfare of the woman. That is some theme that we can look into. So that will be in GS2. So just scrolling, you can see how thing has been in Himachal Pradesh. You can see the vertical cutting also, right? The slope is almost 90 degrees. Now we are here. This is about the explainer which I mentioned about the cloud burst. So it's very simple. When is heavy rainfall termed as a cloud burst? Cloud burst is a term that we have been hearing. So what is a cloud burst? How is it different from a heavy rainfall? So cloud burst is when an area of 10 by 10 kilometers, within an area of 10 by 10 kilometers, a short small area has a rainfall of 10 centimeter, exceeding 10 centimeter in 1 hour period. Fine. So in a small area, there is heavy amount of downpour, specifically 10 centimeter and above in 1 hour. This shall be deemed as cloud burst. The clouds have burst, all the water has been poured onto one area. So it is a localized but intense rainfall activity. Now cloud bursts are more common in hilly regions. Reason being simple, we have orographic rainfalls, the more likely to take place in the hilly regions. But that does not mean it does not take place in plain areas. We have seen in cities where urban floodings have been caused because of cloudburst, be it Bombay, be it Bangalore, almost every part of the country has been affected. Okay. Now here an analogy has been used. It is saying that if in a half an hour period, if in 30 minutes, rainfall exceeding 5 centimeter takes place, that may also be deemed as a cloud burst. Now the next question, can this be forecasted? Right? If cloudbursts are taking place, can we forecast it? So presently, no meteorological agency, be it government, be it private, can actually measure or forecast cloudburst. This is because when they zoom onto a particular area, zoom onto a small area over here, it becomes more and more difficult to predict rainfall. They can actually predict rainfall over a larger part of the country. And there also they can at best say heavy rainfall, light rainfall. So like that they can say. Okay. So things are not good, looking good as far as the rains are concerned. Interestingly, we were talking about the El Nino to be a dry year overall. Now coming to the Vishwakarma Yojana. Vishwakarma, the people worship Vishwakarma, God, especially from mechanical engineering, people who do skilled work, labor work. So they worship Vishwakarma Bhagwan. So Vishwakarma Yojana is there. For this, the cabinet has cleared 13,000 crores. It is a 5-year scheme for people associated with crafts. We'll be more specific, 18 traditional crafts. So people engaged in 18 traditional crafts will be beneficiaries of the Vishwakarma Yojana. These are carpenters, boat makers, armorer, blacksmiths, right? Hammer and toolkit maker, sculptors, so 18 cobblers, so 18 traditional crafts, they are coming under the Vishwakarma Yojana. So in this scheme, traditional crafts are covered, and it is said that about 30 lakh families will be covered in the next 5-year period. Now, how will these people benefit? These people will be provided with credit. You do any work, any business, you need credit or a loan. So initially 1 lakh rupees may be provided, up to 1 lakh rupees in first tranche, and in the this will be non-collateral. That is, nothing will be, when you borrow something, you have to give a collateral, or you have to give something girvi rakhna padta hai. So here no collateral is there. Collateral free loan will be there. So 1 lakh rupees, and in the next tranche, second tranche, 2 lakh rupees will be provided at an interest rate of 5%, at a nominal interest rate of 5%, or concessional interest rate of 5%. Okay, so loan will be provided with this, which they can carry on their economic activity. This loan can also be used for upgradation of their tools and equipments. So with this upgradation, the quality of their labor will get improved. The quality of the work will get improved. Okay. This Vishwakarma Yojana also gives emphasis to skill training. So skilling the people in traditional labor craft. And for this, they will be getting a stipend of up to rupees 500. So a stipend of rupees 500 will be provided. Okay. And the idea is, with this skilling and with upgradation of tools and equipment, we have more skilled labor. They are self-employed. At the same time, they have reach to the market and also global value chain. So they are integrated to the global value chain. That is the ultimate goal. So they have sustainable income source. Okay, next. Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs gives nod to 7 multi-tracking railway projects worth 32,000 crores. He's the railway minister, by the way. Okay. So what I understand is, obviously, so many states are mentioned over here. What I understand is, railway tracks are there: single track, double track, multi-track. Right, so multiple tracks are there so that it addresses the issue of congestion, delays due to, sometimes they have to wait, trains have to wait to give the other train a pass. So to address all these issues, maybe we can also talk about dedicated freight corridor. So freight movement is delayed in a country to give way for passenger traffic. So those issues will also get addressed. Who knows, it will help India's logistics performance index also. Okay, this news has been mentioned twice. So one in the economy section and other now. And overall, same thing is covered. So rupees 14,903 for Digital India Phase 2. So what is being done over here? So money will be spent on skilling, cyber security, and high performance computing. Right? For all this, money will be spent. Now, when we talk about skilling, we're talking about 6.25 lakh IT professionals. So they will be reskilled and upskilled. Besides, they will be emphasizing on cyber security. Obviously, cyber security is a must with a lot of, we're moving towards the digital domain. Okay. Now, very importantly, 9 more supercomputers will be added under the National Supercomputing Mission. So same thing will be repeated again. So yes, check illegal blending to protect Darjeeling tea. So there is a tea board of India. I think this thing is clear, like Darjeeling tea is very famous, right? It's in West Bengal, is very famous. In fact, the tea coming from Darjeeling has a GI tag, indicating that this tea is from Darjeeling. Now what is happening is that Darjeeling tea is being blended with Nepal tea coming from Nepal. So automatically it is affecting the farmers of Darjeeling. So CHE must have seen that there is blending taking place. About 90 to 95% of Nepal tea is blended with the Darjeeling tea. So CAG is advising the Tea Board of India, the Tea Board of India mentioned over here, which is responsible for development of tea in India. Now this Tea Board of India, which is, I'm going to tell you something important. is coming under Ministry of Commerce and Industry. This is the way UPSC asks questions. So that's it. And I have not checked, but it should be a statutory body. Tea Board of India. Now we come to the editorial page. Okay, so first article, a political time called Future, in PM Modi's Independence Day speech, a different imagination for India's past and present. I am not doing it today, right? So today I have not focused on this, may not in future also. Next, thank you, Mr. Pathak. So this is about the person responsible for the Sulabh toilet movement. So Sulabh toilet means public toilets, which acknowledged the dignity of the citizens and presaged the idea of Swachh Bharat. So Swachh Bharat, we all know, urban toilets being created, addressing the issue of manual scavenging. So Sulabh toilets, public toilet movement started, and this gave the idea of it was a precursor to Swachh Bharat movement. So very quickly, so in late 1960s, there was a volunteer by the name Bindeshwar Pathak. So Brahmin basically, who worked in a village with the Dalit community in Betia. Now, Dalit community, especially in 1960s, we're talking about. So many of them were working, engaged in manual scavenging. So that time there was absence of public toilets or toilets which have the latrine facility. So nothing of that sort was there, not just in for the village people, but also for the well-off in urban area. In other areas also, this was not available. So the dry latrine had to be picked up physically, manually, and this responsibility fell on to the people from the Dalit community, specifically people from the engaged in this occupation, which was hereditary. So they were already aware of this thing, but this condition was very bad. He realized when he was working over here. Plus, there was no public toilets. So he came up with the idea of Sulabh toilet. Sulabh toilet. In this, we did not require, so much of water was not required. At the same time, expensive treatment plant was also not required. Expensive sewer treatment plants, etc., were not required. So this was his innovation. So Sulabh toilet basically comprises of the toilet, as you can see, or if I can have the image, yeah, or we can call it as a two-pit toilet, in which the toilet is connected with two pits. So let's say somebody does latrine over here, and this pit is remained open. So this pit is closed. So the latrine is allowed to move to this pit. This pit is, by the way, covered. So all the wet waste percolates into the soil, and the dry waste keeps, that bacterial action keeps taking place, and it gets converted into compost, which can then be physically picked up and used by the farmers as a fertilizer. Now, once this pit is filled, this pit is left open. And that's how this thing functions. So that is the two-pit toilet, and this is the initiative of Bindeshwar Pathak. So he came up with this initiative. It was a practical approach, especially at a time when septic tanks, etc., were not common. Septic tanks, sewage treatment plants were not available. He had a tough time convincing the Bihar government. He was working in Bihar, but gradually he was able to do it. Okay. So Sulabh has converted dry latrines into two-pit pour flush latrines in more than 1700 towns and built over 1.5 million toilets, or 15 lakh toilets. He was awarded Stockholm Water Prize and Padma Bhushan in 2016. I'm not sure about the year. Okay, he was also awarded the Gandhi Peace Prize in 2016. Okay, so that was Sulabh movement. It's a two-pit pour toilet. we can actually address the issue of manual scavenging. We can always build on that. By the way, we have a video on manual scavenging. All the important points, facts, etc. are covered over there in a short video of 12-15 minutes. Next, we come to global headwinds. I've simplified it over here. So first of all, we have facts coming in that exports of India is falling. So merchandise exports, that is retail exports, has fallen to a 9-month low of $32.25 billion in July. Nobody is asking you facts actually. Yes, it is falling down. It is one at the lowest. Now this is because of lower commodity prices. So one reason is lower commodity prices. We export food, cereals, petroleum also. So those are commodities. So if the commodity price is low, naturally the value of our export will also be low. Then both non-oil exports and imports have fallen. So that is one of the major reasons why our exports are low. One of the factors. Now, why is this happening? It's because the global demand is low. Global economy is not doing well. That is why the demand for exports from India is also low. Now, talking about the global demand, we have a fact coming in from the International Monetary Fund. The International Monetary Fund issues a report known as World Economic Outlook. And it has predicted that the world economy's growth rate will be 3%. It will slow down from 3.5%. So it is projected that the global economy will slow down from 3.5% to 3%. Naturally, so we have a fact, if the economy is slowing down, so demand will also come down. Okay, and talking about the trade volumes, it has come down from 5.2% to 2%. Fine. So we have some facts about global demand or global economy, which I wanted to mention. And we get this from the World Economic Outlook, which is published by the International Monetary Fund. Now, when the exports are low, naturally, how does exports? One is coming from the farmers, commodities, then the finished goods, etc. So ultimately, it is going to affect jobs. We want job creations, we want capacity creation, we want to sell our goods to the global markets. So if those selling is not taking place, ultimately people will have to be fired. So jobs will get affected. Besides, if the exports come down and imports do not come down, so the current account deficit will increase. The deficit will increase. So this will not bode well for the Indian economy. Okay, so this is it from the editorial and the opinion section. Pakistan, there is communal tension. Pakistan, Punjab churches torched after desecration row erupts. Fine. Coming to China, the important topic. China appears to be building airstrip on disputed island. That disputed island is known as Triton Island, which is part of the Parcel Group. The Parcel Group is claimed by China, of course, and Vietnam and Taiwan. And all of this lies in the South China Sea region. Finished. That's all. Now let's look at the map also. So you can see this is the map of the South China Sea region. This is the 9- line, the Chinese line of claim. Okay. So China has been claiming the Parcel Islands and the Spratly Islands. And look at the location. China has been claiming this islands, and this is very close, within the close vicinity of the Southeast Asian countries. Okay. And Taiwan also is claiming this Parcel Islands. So we are seeing activity of creation of airstrips or artificial creation of islands by China in this region. How will this help China? It may help China by building defense structures over here. Plus, if some of China says that this is part of China in the future, so the region around the sea will also be claimed by China as per the UNCLOS laws. United Nations Convention on the Law of the Seas, that is UNCLOS. Okay, so that is why this is being done. And besides, Up till now, the last 10 years, there was hardly any controversy surrounding this. But in the recent times, there has been discovery of energy, fossil fuels, and natural gas from this region. And besides, there is prevalence of rare earths and strategic minerals on the seabed, which can be mined by China. So China wants to have the monopoly over this region. And one more reason is this region connects the supply lines of China's economy. Although we can say that it is the sea lanes of communication, or the sea lines of communications, SLOC, passes through this region. So China is very sensitive to it. Okay, so this topic is done. ICC, International Criminal Court, should prosecute Taliban for denying girls education, says UN envoy Gordon Brown. Okay, so obviously we should know about the International Criminal Court. So the International Criminal Court was created via Rome Statute. It is a permanent war crimes court in 2002. Now the next question, which has already been asked in the prelims, is International Criminal Courts a part of UN? No. So Rome Statute was adopted under the auspices of UN, but it is not part of the United Nations. Very important fact. By the way, India is not a signatory to ICC, but International Court of Justice. Now coming to the economy section, same Digital India scheme, same thing is mentioned over here, right? Same points. Coming to the next article, banks likely to raise deposit rates to meet credit demand. Okay. So, yes. So let's start with a story. The Prime Minister or the government announces that rupees 2000 notes will not be legal tender. So means it will not be valid, and these have to be deposited to the banks and you get fresh currency. Right. So because of this, because of the deposits of rupees 2000 currency notes, monies come to the banks. As a result of there was too much liquidity. Naturally, the banks would like to lend this money. And this will mean more supply of money in the economy, and that would be inflationary, especially at a time where inflation is already very high. It's around 6% already. So the Reserve Bank of India, to address this issue, Reserve Bank of India did not want to change the repo rate, the reverse repo rate, the SLR, statutory liquidity ratio, all these things coming under the liquidity adjustment facility. It didn't want to adjust this. So they said, okay, fine. For the time being, we will create a temporary arrangement known as ICRR, incremental cash reserve ratio. So we have a cash reserve ratio, but this has been increased. So incremental cash reserve ratio. This is a temporary arrangement, keeping into account the decision to deposit rupees 2000. So excess liquidity will be addressed to via this. Okay. Now, because of the ICRR, banks are required to put money into the RBI. So what has happened is, it has led to a bit of shortage of money for meeting the credit demand. So there are people who want to make investments. For that they need credit, and we are into the credit season. So to raise capital, already the money has gone. So to raise capital, the banks are decided that they will either increase the deposit rate, that is, people can park money into the banks, they will get higher interest rates. So by 25-30 basis points, it will be increased, which is 0.25%. So that can be done. Or they may issue certificate of deposit. So people will deposit their money, banks will have money. With that, they can meet the credit demand. So what is a certificate of deposit? This is important, especially for prelims. It is a negotiable, unsecured money market instrument. It's not a capital market instrument. It is a money market instrument, which is issued by a bank as a usance promissory notes. against fund deposited by the bank for a maturity of up to 1 year. So anybody deposits money, they may be issued a certificate of deposit. It will be a tenure of about 1 year, minimum of, up to a 1 year, maximum of 1 year. So over here, we have learned about the ICRR, the shortage of money for credit. So deposit rate will be increased, or certificate of deposits will be issued, or both can be done. Last one, India's new non-poor. Recently, Prime Minister on his in his Independence Day address said that 13.5 crore Indians have broken out of poverty and entered middle class. And this is being stated in accordance with multi-dimensional poverty index, which is issued by the Niti Aayog. Right. So in this article, it tells us about multi-dimensional poverty. It tells us about past attempts made at measuring poverty. Right. So that has been mentioned. Okay. So let me go in chronology. So rather, let us first see what measures have been taken to address the issue of poverty, and then come to multi-dimensional poverty index. It will make more sense. So first attempt was made by, we can say, Dadabhai Naoroji, poverty estimation. Dadabhai Naoroji in 1901, where he wanted to draw people's, particularly Britishers' attention to poverty in India. And he wrote a book known as Poverty and Un-British Rule in India. So this he came, where he looked into the money, the money that they have, income, and the money required for having a subsistence diet, the basic diet, so that they can meet the hunger requirements. So that was the approach, was Dadabhai Naoroji. Okay, the grand old man of India. So poverty and un-British rule in India was first attempt. Besides this, the government has appointed several committees, expert committees, to look into the issue of poverty. So they have drawn a poverty line based on the similar approach. That is, how much money is required to have the basic food which will meet your calorie requirements for both rural and urban area. The money that a person has to buy food which will provide you calories to live, sustain. So basic hunger can be addressed. So we have D.T. Lakdawala, which was in 1993. Then we have Suresh Tendulkar report, 2009. And lastly, we have C. Rangarajan report. C. Rangarajan basically said 35% of the population, 35% of the poorest population are by default poor. End of story. So it should not be based on calorie alone, meeting hunger needs, but it may, okay, 65% is rich or not poor. The bottom is 35% is poor. So that is what the C. Rangarajan committee had said. Okay. So this was the traditional approach. So it was mainly based on the calorie, money to buy the food, subsistence diet. Now, eventually, obviously, poverty is not just based on food requirements and to live, but it is much wider in its implications. So for that, it has now been accepted, and now we have the multi-dimensional poverty index. That is, poverty is multi-dimensional. It can be seen in terms of living a good life, which can be with respect to health and nutrition, education, and standard of living. Right, so these finer details are mentioned: health with nutrition, child and adolescent mortality, maternal health with education, years of schooling and attendance, and standard of living with reference to sanitation, drinking, having a bank account, etc. So these three parameters are taken. Now, if you look closely, this resembles the United Nations Development Programme's Human Development Index. Same parameters they also use: health, education, and standard of living. However, the multidimensional poverty index, which India has incorporated, is much wider in its scope. For example, standard of living in HDI is merely per capita income, so GDP divided by population. But here it is having access to sanitation facilities, drinking, availability of water, so basic amenities. So that are also incorporated. So it's much wider in its approach. So that is multidimensional poverty index. So that's it. So MPI has improved. 13.5 crore people are outside of poverty, have escaped the issue of poverty. So this is it from